There was no possibility of walking to the library that day. Morning rain had blanched the air, and Miss Darlington feared that if Cecilia ventured out, she would develop a cough and be dead within the week. Therefore Cecilia was at home, sitting with her aunt in a room 10 degrees colder than the streets of London, and reading aloud The Song of Hiawatha by that American rogue, Mr. Longfellow, when the strange gentleman knocked at their door. As the sound barged through the house, interrupting Cecilia's recitation mid-rhyme, she looked inquiringly at her aunt. But Miss Darlington's own gaze went to the mantel clock, which was ticking sedately toward 1:45. The old lady frowned. "It is an abomination the way people these days knock at any wild, unseemly hour," she said, in much the same tone the Prime Minister had used in Parliament recently to decry the London rioters. "I do declare." Cecilia waited, but Miss Darlington's only declaration came in the form of sipping her tea pointedly, by which Cecilia understood that the abominable caller was to be ignored. She returned to Hiawatha, and had just begun proceeding toward the land of the pearl feather, when the knocking came again with increased force, silencing her and causing Miss Darlington to set her teacup into its saucer with a clink. Tea splashed, and Cecilia hastily laid down the poetry book before things really got out of hand. "I shall see who it is," she said, smoothing her dress as she rose and touching the red gold hair at her temples, although there was no crease in the muslin, nor a single strand out of place in her coiffure. "Do be careful, dear," Miss Darlington admonished. "Anyone attempting to visit at this time of day is obviously some kind of hooligan." "Fear not, Auntie." Cecilia took up a bone-handled letter-opener from the small table beside her chair. "They will not trouble me." Miss Darlington harumphed. "We are buying no subscriptions today," she called out, as Cecilia left the room. In fact, they had never bought subscriptions, so this was an unnecessary injunction, although typical of Miss Darlington, who persisted in seeing her ward as the reckless tomboy who had entered her care 10 years before, prone to climbing trees, fashioning cloaks from tablecloths, and making unauthorized doorstep purchases whenever the fancy took her. But a decade's proper education had wrought wonders, and now Cecilia walked the hall quite calmly, her French heels tapping against the polished marble floor, her intentions aimed in no way toward the taking of a subscription. She opened the door. "Yes?" she asked. "Good afternoon," said the man on the step. "May I interest you in a brochure on the plight of the endangered North Atlantic auk?" Cecilia blinked from his pleasant smile to the brochure he was holding out in a black-gloved hand. She noticed at once the scandalous lack of hat upon his blonde hair, and the embroidery trimming his black frock-coat. He wore neither sideburns nor moustache, his boots were tall and buckled, and a silver hoop hung from one ear. She looked again at his smile, which quirked in response. "No," she said, and closed the door. And bolted it. Ned remained for a moment longer with the brochure extended, as his brain waited for his body to catch up with events. He considered what he had seen of the woman who had stood so briefly in the shadows of the doorway, but he could not recall the exact colour of the sash that waisted her soft white dress, nor whether it had been pearls or stars in her hair, nor even how deeply winter dreamed in her lovely eyes. He held only a general impression of beauty so rare and face so fair, and implacability so terrifying in such a young woman. And then his body made pace, and he grinned.